Hi, everybody, it's Weird Wink Wilkinson laughing and scratching at you. How's everybody doing today? I got a little bit of a stiff neck. Let me just fix this up. Oh, that feels a lot better. Well, I got a great show for you today with some wonderful weird stuff. I feel so very weird.
There are some things in this world that go way beyond human understanding. Things that cannot be explained, things that most people don't want to know about. That is where we come in.
No human being would stack books like this.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. I'm all out of bubblegum.
Well, it looks like you're the one who needs to be taught a lesson, pal. Class is paying 101. The instructor's Casey Jones.
Look, I don't want to fight you.
Well, tough rocks, pal.
Do you want some coffee, Mr. Tully?
Do I?
Yes, have some.
Yes, have some.
It's a cup of coffee in the big time, yeah. Cup of coffee in the big time.
Hey, what do you say we both be independent together, huh?
I guess one person can make a difference. Enough said.
We have the tools, we have the talent.
It's Miller time.
Luminous beings, so we, not this fruit basher.
Empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow, or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
Hey, these aren't my rules. Come to think of it, I don't have any rules.
Well, that's great. Either I have a monster in my kitchen or I'm completely crazy.
I don't think you're crazy.
You know something? Maybe I am insane. Maybe I am insane.
Pizza dude's got 30 seconds.
Rise to the top, oh yeah.
That's the nicest thing a dog can say about anybody.
Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. Enough, I get the point. You know what you need? You need a Brazilian plastic surgeon.
I've got one that can see.
Sometimes happens, someone has to deal with it, and who are you gonna call?
It's showtime.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Comic Book Radio, episode 279. I'm your host, Peter Cimetti. Tonight, my guest is Bill Williams. We're going to be talking about his career and path through the world of comics. It's going to be one of those shows. It's going to be a fun show. This is going to be the first time that Bill has been a guest on this show. I've been trying to get him for a while, trying to work him in the schedule, trying to figure out how to get that going. I tend to book 2 months out or so in advance, so this should be a fun one. I've been looking forward to this one. Now, before I do begin and before I say hello to you guys, newsprintcomics.com. That'll take you to the Fund My Comic campaign tomorrow to raise money to print your comic and my comic on newsprint in-house. I'm going to be setting this up in-house, printing newsprint interiors, got the whole thing going. Gonna raise money for the equipment, the machinery, all the supplies, all that good stuff. The campaign is very detailed, so we'll go over that tomorrow night. It launches at 9 o'clock Eastern. That's May 9th, tomorrow night, Friday, on Fund My Comic. And if you guys are interested, please tune in tomorrow night, and I'll go over that whole campaign on the show. And hopefully we can reach the goal that's needed. I got all these little mini goals throughout so I can start purchasing equipment, because the way Fund My Comic works and the way I have it set up is that funds will come in. It's not like a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo where you got to wait like the month or whatever it is. Fund My Comic, you can have it so that the funds actually come in within like a day or two as they're contributed. So because of that, I'm going to take advantage of that and get machinery, get the equipment in, order it as I hit certain goals on the campaign. And that's going to be detailed and highlighted on the campaign. And I have the whole thing to read to you guys tomorrow. So it's going to be a very eventful day tomorrow. So I hope you guys tune in if you are interested in that. And I think a lot of people are. So far, there's a lot of buzz for it, a lot of very excited people. I'm very excited about it. And I'm looking forward to it. So let's say hello to you guys, though. We got Bretsky here. What's up, Bretsky? Good to see you. We got the darker half here. How's it going? Dr. Mask is in the chat. What's up? We got Cole King. What's up, Cole? Good to see you. And we got Art here. What's up, Art? Art Haida or Art Hida? Art. I'll stick to Art. How's it going? Hope you're doing well. Dr. Mask says, looking forward to the campaign, Pete. Thank you very much, man. I'm looking forward to it, too. I think it's going to be a real good one. I really do. I got a good feeling about it. Very good feeling about it. What's up, Ganjiao? Hope you're doing well. I'm going to be on his channel next week talking about the campaign. Kelraiser, what's up, Kelraiser? Good to see you. We got Wayne here, too. How's it going, Wayne? Nice to see you here tonight. All right. So let's bring on Bill, right? Without further ado, the man of the hour. We got Mr. Bill Williams. What's up, Bill?
Not much. How are you today? I'm actually kind of thrilled to see what you're doing with your campaign.
Oh, thank you. You've heard about it? Or seen it?
I know. I follow you on Twitter, and I've seen you kind of thinking out loud there. And printing is one of the big holdups for small press guys getting their books out to people. So if you can solve that problem, I don't have to buy my books in China. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, but you're telling me, man. I'm going to start small with it and really try to perfect it, and then evaluate as I go on. But it's going to be like two sizes offered. One's like a mini size at 5 by 7.5, and then one standard size at 6.625 by 10 1/4. And it's just going to be newsprint interiors, saddle stitch books. Some people have been asking about hardcovers and perfect bound and foil covers. I'm not doing any of that. Definitely not right away. Maybe not ever.
Why would you do a hardcover newsprint book?
So yeah. So it's one of those things where it's kind of like back in the old days with like the Model T Ford. You can get it in any color as long as it's black. It's going to be like you can get any comic you want as long as it's on newsprint.
That's true.
And and to me, we need more newsprint books. We have a plethora of all these things that are out there right now that are not on newsprint. And we need newsprint to come back. So there's a lot of people that are interested in this. I love comics on newsprint. We've been making comics on newsprint with a commercial printer for about 7-8 years now. And just the way things are going with printing, the costs are rising, the quality is decreasing, the wait times are increasing, all of that stuff. I just figured, let me try this, see if I could do it. And I was shocked that I was able to do it well with the rinky-dink 10-year-old printer I have. Yeah. And I'm like, what if I had all the good stuff? What if I had everything I actually needed? And the last time I looked this up was like 5 or so years ago, and the technology just wasn't there, and it cost an arm and a leg to get the stuff that would do it right. And I looked it up again, and I was like, wow, things have really advanced in that time, and it's not so bad. It's not 50,000, it'd be like 15K. So I figure, why not? Let's see if people are interested in this. There seems to be a lot of people like you and I that are kind of frustrated with the printing situation nowadays. And if I can make it work, I'll find a way. And I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to work out great for not just myself, but for a lot of other creators. And I'm really looking forward to that aspect of it too.
Be careful, you may end up with a full-time out of this.
Oh, yeah.
Just making comics, but you'll have print orders coming in because I like the concept of comics being kind of a disposable art form, and they haven't been that in a while. One of the things you're going to bump up against is you're going to have different production approaches and values when you're putting these things together, because full gradient shading on newsprint's not going to pop that well. So people are going to have to kind of rethink what they're doing. Oh, really?
You'd be surprised. Have you seen an alternate comics book?
I've seen them. I quit reading mainstream comics about 10 years ago. So I go into the store and I see my buddies and I buy a copy of Daredevil. And that's about all I do. So every couple of months I head down and chat with my friends. And
so we're direct now to readers. We got out of the distribution racket in 2020. But so here's King Cryptid.
Yeah.
And if you like monsters, mysteries, adventure, and all that good stuff, I recommend you pick
it.
It
looks
up.
awesome.
But there's the first page, and this is newsprint.
Yeah. That looks awesome. Are you having a hard time finding newsprint to put some comic pages on?
No.
Well, that's awesome.
And I'm finding... That's the thing. That's another thing on the campaign that I want to do, and not to monopolize talking to you about this on the show, but
we'll get to my stuff eventually.
That's something that I want to be able to. I have stretch goals on the campaign too, to purchase more supplies and more ink and more replacement parts and things like that to kind of future-proof what I'm doing. Because the more I can get now, especially of things like paper, the better it is. The cheaper I can get it. And I can just store that in the storage center that we have. But
well, that looks good.
Coloring, yeah. Christian Rossi did a wonderful job on this.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking about the 70s when I started reading comics. How rough the Marvel and DC stuff looked like.
Honestly, dude, even things have changed since we started out putting comics on newsprint 7 years ago.
Yeah,
and the technology even for that has evolved so much. You can make beautiful looking art on newsprint now. Whereas like even 7-8 years ago, it was a little bit more clunky with some of the tech behind getting the color on there. But I was shocked that I did these little mini comics even just from home, and they came out great. And what I'm going to be doing is going to come out even better, because I'm going to be using like archival ink, so it doesn't get on your fingers either. Like ours will still get on your fingers right now.
Yeah.
For some people it's part of the charm. For me, it's something I could live without.
Yeah.
And then it's going to last far longer than we will. It's supposed to be like 200 to 400 years waterproof and fade resistant and all that kind of stuff.
I guess that makes you want to pick up your game if your work's going to be around 400 years,
Yeah, exactly. You got to think twice.
Yeah.
But so it's going to be really nice stuff. The paper stock is going to be nearly identical. I think the quality is going to be superior. And then I'm outsourcing the covers to a local commercial printer. This way they can still get the covers done really nice. And I don't have to get like another...
you don't have to get another machine.
Giant machine just for the covers. Because you can't do inkjet with glossy, with the comic cover quality. It's not going to come out as good. But inkjet is very similar to the way a web press or offset would lay out the ink on the page. It's kind of the same thing as opposed to like toner on the page. It's a very different sort of vibe.
So how much do you save by doing newsprint instead of whatever other paper stock they use?
Oh, it's like half the cost.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I hope this works.
And that adds up. Yeah. Like on even just to do a run for people of, I'm going to do 200 or less, and even to just do like a 32-page comic, a run of 200 of those full color. It's like about $2 a book, something like that. A little bit
solid.
over.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I hope that works. When I was growing up, you would read a comic and then you could keep it or just kind of trade it or throw it away or whatever. It's always been just kind of in my mind like I said, a disposable medium. Where you read it, you get it, you move on. There's a soap opera aspect to it too that leans into that aspect.
And this is the last question I'm going to take about this, and then I got a bunch of questions for Bill, and we're going to focus on him solely here. Michael says, how will the campaign to fund this venture be set up? I've got a couple of different just regular perk options, like, you can get a shirt and a sticker, and you can get a commission from me. And then I've got things like you can get a sample pack. So you can get the small comic, the mini comic, and you get the standard comic. You can get the Alterna one where I have different art styles of each of the books put in the sample pack, so you can kind of see different samples of those art styles reflected. And then I got one that's you can get your own comic. So if you got a comic set up, you can get your own printed as a mini and as a standard, and just one copy of each. And then I've got it as print vouchers, so you can pre-purchase your printing. It's like, I think like $50, $100, $150, etc., all the way up to $1,000. So, and those, there's no expiration on that. So if you want to print in a year or two or whatever, you can get that done, and you can count that towards when you redeem that voucher for your print order. And if for some reason the wheels fall off the thing completely and you're left with a voucher, you will get your money back on that. So I've got that in the campaign, detailed in that and everything, but I don't foresee that occurring. I think this is going to run a very, very long time. And if anything, I think it's going to get bigger and better. So that's how the campaign is going to be structured. But for you had mentioned about, reading comics when you were a kid. What comics did you get into when you were a kid?
I would buy stuff off the newsstand, and I'm lucky because I got to read Marvel comics in kind of what for me is kind of a Bronze Age heyday. So I was reading the Romita and Kane on Amazing Spider-Man. Byrne had just taken over on X-Men, so mid-70s. I graduated from high school in '82, so I'm older than dirt. But I would pick up cool stuff, and one of those things I remember waiting forever was waiting for the last couple of issues on Watchmen. So I remember, all these things out when they came out in a serial form instead of these big paperbacks. Yeah. It was a little bit different. You got a whole story per issue almost. Now you get like a sixth or a 16th of a story. It's like, I got these people with their mouths open talking and fighting monsters. I have no idea what the hell's going on.
Yeah, dude, that's literally why I'm making King Cryptid the way I'm making it. It's a long form story, of course. Like I've got a big, giant arc of sorts going on, but every issue is self-contained. You can enjoy the issue, and it connects with the others, but it's not like you're in the middle of the conversation if you pick up issue 7 or something and you're going to be like, man, I don't know what the hell is going on.
It seems to me kind of ridiculous to wonder why you're not getting any new readers when you make it harder for new readers to get up on it, to jump into the story right then. I went to Free Comic Book Day at a local store and picked up a bunch of comics, and I got kind of the opposite effect in there. I picked up like 10 or 15 comics. I've read through most of them so far, and they're all like a 5-page tease for the next launch of Spider-Man 1 or whatever else. I'm like, come on, can you at least get me? I can write 12-page stories. I can write 6-page stories. You guys get paid a lot. Write something fun and breakdownable,
Yeah, and I mean, just have that subplot in there that's overarching. That's all. Yeah. And then like the big payoff eventually. But like every issue should read like a day in the life. And that's what I thought was fun anyway for me when I was reading so many more comics than I read now, especially from the mainstream. Was that it felt like you were just following up on, what's Spider-Man up to this month? What are the X-Men doing? And it wasn't like you had to read the 30 issues that came before. Or what's worse now when you have like the event-wide type crossover things going on where you got to read all these other books that you're like, I would never read that. Why do I got to pick that one up?
You're going to make me read
you're
going to make me read Nightwing whether I like it or not. Don't do that.
But it's so weird, and I think the more that we keep going into a system in the mainstream where they feel like they got to reboot or retcon or whatever, or come up with like the 10th different miniseries that year for that character, the more convoluted it gets. It was way less complicated when it was just a couple of titles with that character, and they each had their own feel, and then that was it. That was the story.
I feel for people that work in mainstream comics, especially on the editorial end, because they have to deal with artists, and I don't want to say we're tremendous flakes, but there's a certain flakiness to us. But they're at a point of sort of diminishing returns. They managed to make it 40 or 50 years before they rebooted Spider-Man, and now they're rebooting Amazing Spider-Man almost on an annual basis at this point, just trying to keep the interest up, to keep the sales up, to keep the doors open. They need some hits, and a lot of people in those gigs we're talking about second, third tier editorial. Again, they came into this from something else, and that I'm not sure that they know what they're doing. They're just trying to traffic manage and keep their job and keep the doors open.
Well, that's why I love the indie aspect of things. Now, I never went down the road of working in the mainstream. I talked to enough people that did when I was starting off that I was scared straight.
Yeah.
Enough of them that were kind of giving me the Billy Madison speech of like, stay here.
Yeah.
You know, and so I did, and I just stuck doing my own indie stuff, and I never really looked back, and I've had no interest since of getting into the mainstream. But that's what excites me about the indie realm of things, is because it seems like, you know, you get these new characters, you get new storylines, you get new creators coming in with new ideas, and that even if the ideas are still a bit raw, there's potential there, and there's a lot of growth that happens within that side of things, where it feels like there's so much stagnation and kind of this weird, I don't know, like illusion of change that occurs in the mainstream. And when they step outside of the status quo, it's still like they're not really stepping outside of the status quo, and sometimes they're doing it to the detriment of the great stuff they have. Now,
well, and mostly whenever somebody steps outside of the status quo, you know that they're going to step right back once the creators start to leave the book. You know, the Hulk as what is it? The immoral Hulk, the Eternal Hulk, one of the ones where the Hulk turned into a horror show. You know that wasn't going to be like that forever. You know, he'd end up teaming up with Doctor Strange at some point in the future. But you know, I'm finding most of the energy right now is on the crowdfunding side. You've got guys like Jonathan Hickman writing really interesting stuff for Marvel. But one of my pals at Antarctic Press sent me a list of crowdfunders I could support the other day, and it was 25 names long. You know, I think that there are dozens and dozens of crowdfunders running around the clock, and it's hard to get the oxygen in that environment. But you know, these are people that came to the game. Thanks, Marcus. It was the Immortal Hulk. We all came to the same conclusion that getting into working on mainstream comics, you sort of have to have a friend that's the bouncer that will let you through the door. You know, I'd written some stuff from DC. I'd inked a few things for DC, and that was every time I got work for him. I got work because somebody that I knew that worked for a big publisher needed a hand on a project, and I got kind of pulled in to do a little something at the last minute.
Now, for you, when it came to the mainstream work, did that come before you did something in indie, or was it kind of like an in-between? How did that go in the timeline of your career?
Same sort of time. If you look at yourself as being kind of a factory, DC and Marvel is essentially one more factory outlet, right? Like Scott Campbell's been drawing stuff forever, but he dips in and does a whole lot of covers now, and you know, he is a great creator. He's also a great businessman, because he sells a lot of exclusive variants and he banks doing that kind of stuff. So, matter of fact, right now I'm ghosting for somebody who's working on a top 5 book. So I'm drawing backgrounds on somebody else's book, getting paid cash, paying rent with it. You know, I mean, it's you know, they're a good client once you're in, but once you're out, it's almost impossible to get back in unless you're a big name person.
Gotcha. What do you prefer? Do you prefer the mainstream, or do you prefer the indie side?
I like being free to write whatever I feel like. One of my favorite lines I got from an editor one time, I had written an issue of the Justice League Unlimited comic, and the note from the editor said, "Superman does not use sarcasm." Like, okay, I'll rewrite the line. You know, I mean, there are all these unwritten rules dealing with somebody else's character, and you just have to realize that that's going to come up, and you make some change and you go on, because at the end of the day, it's not your stuff. You know, on Punchline and some of the other things that I've worked on over time, I'm going to do whatever I feel like, and hopefully it makes a good story.
It's funny you say that about them giving you a note like that. Did they stop giving notes like that to a lot of the different writers, or is there a certain echelon where they're like, yeah, we don't give them notes?
Well, if you don't have a proven track record with somebody, you're going to get more notes because they assume that because you haven't made money for them that you don't know what you're doing.
Interesting. Yeah. But yeah, it's funny how when you're in the indie side of things, it is a bit more wild and free. You can kind of play fast and loose and get creative with it.
Yeah.
But there is that level of you got to rein it in a bit with the mainstream stuff.
A little bit,
like you said, when you're not really a proven quantity.
Yeah, in my case, working on Punchline, there's a great twist at the end of the second issue. And a buddy of mine read the book and he goes, "That's a great twist. Why wasn't that in the first one?" I said, "Well, I didn't think of it until later." There's some times where it's handy to have somebody in editorial say, if you can change this a little bit, it sets this aspect of the book up a little better. So editors aren't always bad. It's bad if they don't know what they're doing. But if you get somebody smart who's great with a second opinion, that's a big bonus to your book.
Oh yeah, great to bounce ideas off of them and lead you to somewhere new and better, hopefully.
Yeah. Why did Mel kill that guy? Well, she was mad at him to start with. So yeah, it goes on from there.
Now, what was your first indie creation that you would say you were really proud of?
Ooh, proud of. That's a dividing line.
Yeah.
I worked for the company that did the rock and roll comics, and they were sort of circling the drain, and they brought me in to ink some stuff. I inked a Janis Joplin comic book that was just terrible, so that's not on the proud side. I've got a bias towards my stuff. I can look at my work and see the intent, see what I was trying to do, and other people are going to look at it cold and go, well, this didn't make any sense. So I'm proud of most of the things that I've worked on, even if they don't always connect with people.
Oh, okay. What's your favorite one that you've done?
I'm a bit mercurial. My favorite project is almost always the one I'm working on right now.
What's that?
I just finished Punchline 16, and I'm haggling with the printer and the nice people at AP and some other people, but that should come out through Diamond in September, and the people that backed it online will get signed copies as soon as I can get the books over from China. But I'm working on the next one, which is 17, which has Versima and Atomic Butterfly trying to stop a monster invasion at a heavy metal music fest. So I got to draw guitars for a couple of images, and there's also a story about a rock monster in there. So after that, it's 18. That was penciled by Stephen Cummings, and it's gorgeous. So I've got, I wanted to sit down and I wanted to try out some new people. So I hired a lot of people to do a lot of different stuff. So I've got a lot of pages to ink over the rest of the year.
Now, what would you say people might know you from the most?
Wow. I find that I'm kind of unknown for most things.
Someone out there has to,
That's true.
If it's online or at a convention or whatever, you see what what it culminates into.
Yeah.
Someone bringing up something to you or talking to you about something.
We pitched, and we started doing Punchline as a web comic, and we're selling a lot of those through Comixology, RIP. And that was fun. And then we went to AP with a bunch of finished issues. So we put out some comics, and our comic was a free comic book day book in like 2018. So that was kind of cool. So you may have accidentally picked up one of my comics for free at some point. That's a reprint of the first issue and tells the complete story. It's pretty fun. The other stuff, I did some almost anonymous pickup work for DC, and that's about it. I'm mostly an indie guy.
What was your experience with Free Comic Book Day? Because we did that a couple times, and I'm very curious to hear what you thought of it.
I like it as a fan, and I think that it's good for reminding people that the comic book industry exists every year. But the Free Comic Book Day at 23 years on, I think is cool, but I'm not sure that it works. I think that it works sort of well enough. In our case, we put out and we shipped 50,000 copies of the first issue of Punchline,
Mm-hmm.
and it didn't move the needle at all for us. You know,
Same experience for us. Yeah.
Yeah, the sales on I guess at that time 6, 7, and 8 or whatever were exactly the same. So I think it's cool for fans. They get to come in and get some free stuff to read. Every year there was this one random book that would pop and sell for a lot, but that hasn't really happened in a few cycles. So it's cool, but I think it needs sort of a rethink. At least I think publishers need to think about how they're approaching it, because so I picked up the Amazing Spider-Man free comic book day book this year, and there's Peter Parker story drawn by Romita Jr., and then there's a Miles story, and then there's another story, and they're all kind of like fractions of teases of something that might come out later. You know, I think that you need to change up the way you're doing things. Maybe slip in the first appearance of a new cool character and just not tell anybody. I mean, there has to be a way to kind of juice it a little bit, because it's kind of like we're doing that thing by rote, and it doesn't really net the benefits that it could anymore.
Yeah, I think you're right with that, because it feels like it's this weird event where you go to the comic shop, you grab a bunch of comics, depending on what the scenario is, because some shops it's like you can get 5 for free, or if you buy something you can take as many as you want. There's some shops that do it that way. Some shops you could just take one of each or whatever. But there doesn't seem to be an uptick in, not just, it's hard to say to quantify the whole interest of the person who goes there on free comic book day, but from the retail aspect of it to the publisher vendor side of it, like we had a great experience the first year we did it in 2009. We had a book out that was called Attack of the Alternate Zombies. It was a perfect bound book.
Yeah.
It might have been like the first at the time to be like a free comic book day book that was like 70 pages perfect bound. It had an original like around 20 page of a story, and then a bunch of, because it had all of our characters at the time being like zombies and things like that, and then it had the little sample of each book that contained the characters from the complete story, and there was a 100% original story. And so many retailers were saying, you know, we couldn't even keep this thing in stock. The 20 copies we got were gone within 10 minutes. And I'm thinking like, oh great, they're probably going to order a little bit more of what they're doing. And it didn't happen at all. And then we had a free comic book day book, I think 2 other times with the Fubar series, which was like another zombie anthology series, because zombies were hot at the moment. This is around like 2010, 2011, something like that. And again, didn't really notice too much of an uptick from retail sales, but we had a lot of people that were messaging us asking about these books and these series on free comic book day. So it's like a weird disconnect. And I think the event would definitely be more interesting to see books come out that don't have that sampler feel to it, or if they do it the way we did it, where it's a 100% new story, and then here's a preview for what's coming out. But if they had like a debut, I think, what is that? I think was it Kirkman with the Wolfman series that he did? I think so. Issue 1 was a free comic book day book, but like, you know, it would be cool to see that kind of life injected into it. It's a weird thing.
You know, ironically, there needs to be a more sales path thought out through it. I think that, you know, if you pick up these books and flip through, and I've been trying to read them, but there's an advertising term called like call to action or something like this. There's nothing in the book that says, stop by your retailer and demand that they get you the next copy of, you know, Amazing Whatever Man. You know, there's nothing that drives the consumer to get more. You know, they read it and like, oh, that was cool, maybe I'll get the same one again next year. You know, that's helpful, but it doesn't really help anybody in the moment. And it is like the Super Bowl for most comic shops. I went to Dragon's Lair here in Austin, and they probably had 70 short boxes of merchandise that they paid for, that they gave away for the event. And that's a tremendous cash investment, tremendous time investment. and I love those people there, and I'd like to see them get more money for their cash, because it's, they had a bouncy house rented, they had artists set up, it was a big deal, and you would hope that you could find a better way to turn that out. Even like a coupon for a free online comic or a free month of the Marvel Unlimited thing would be a good idea, but there has to be a way to do a better job of converting those casual readers into not so casual readers.
Yeah, it's something that the day it's like, it sounds fun, it's not like it isn't, but there is something about it that it sets a precedent that's a little strange.
Yes,
because it sets you up for disappointment too as a new reader. You go in there and it's not like, okay, now the comics you pick up, they're going to be $1 to $2 an issue. It's like some of these are $6 or $7 an issue.
Yeah,
and it's like if you're introduced on a free issue, it immediately puts a sour taste in your mouth.
Even McFarlane's bumped up the price on Spawn. That's a $3.99 book now. So, I've been haggling with people over cover price on the next issue of Punchline, and we'll see how that turns out. But I think that these things need to be accessible, and if your handful of comics cost more than a Happy Meal, you're going to sell less comics, I think, because people serve first needs first, and money's tight, so you got to find a way to make a cool, affordable thing for people. Yeah.
I think the whole industry with Free Comic Book Day kind of was odd, and I'm going to say this at the risk of sounding like a hypocrite, because we didn't put out an all ages book, although ironically I wanted to.
Yeah,
there was one when we were putting out the newsprint books for the first year, and it was for Free Comic Book Day 2018 was what I had wanted to do. I wanted to have a blank cover, a sketch cover, number 0 of an all ages title we had at the time. And it would be a completely new story, and it was going to have that nice blank variant. And I tried to sell it as, kids could draw on this, make their own cover. Artists on that day could draw on it, maybe get a commission, do whatever, and it's safe for kids. It's not an aimed at kids series, but it's a safe for kids series.
Yeah,
and got flat out rejected. And the thing was only like a dime or something that we were trying to push it through for. For Diamond to do it. And they said because and this was one of our higher selling titles at that point in time. It was like a 3,000 unit selling title, which is pretty high numbers for a small press company.
Mm-hmm.
And they just said that they couldn't justify it. And I was like, this would be like the first of its kind for your event. It's an all ages book, it's a new issue, it's a blank variant cover. And I couldn't break through to anybody at the clandestine FCBD committee. They don't tell you who was involved. It's just like,
there are people that have those gigs that are very risk averse, and they don't want to be the person who did something stupid. So I think your starting point with most people when you're having these discussions is no, and sometimes you can turn it into a yes. But you have to have a clever idea. I mean, if you were doing an instructional comic book series and you sold a sketch cover, make your own comic, and the script is on the left page and your blank panels are on the right page, and maybe there's a breakdown of a way to draw it, maybe that would be something that could work. But if it's just a blank book, I'm not sure that people are going to understand it. But we've been doing this a long time, so we know what we're doing. We can't assume that everybody else has that level of knowledge. So there's ways to get things done, and sometimes you've got to hold people's hands and kind of walk them through it.
Yeah, and I wish the event was more aimed at all ages. It shouldn't allow anything that isn't all ages.
Yeah,
and it should maybe be just free for kids, and that's it.
If that was the case, it would really cut down on the turnout that I saw while I was at the store. Yeah, it's a whole bunch of middle-aged dudes grabbing comics, and I'm fine with that. Bless them. But
the thing is, the stores, and I've bashed my head against the wall trying to talk to several local retailers and being like, you should at least have a sale on Free Comic Book Day. They're like, no, why would you have a sale? Everybody's coming in already, and I'm like, Okay.
Because you've got dead product that's been sitting there for 5 years, and you want to move it out and make room for something new.
You've got like this hoarder's paradise surrounding you. You know, this does have to sell, this stuff. It's not like I'm going into your house and saying that you need to sell the things you own. Like, this is a store. These products are for sale. You know, one of the bigger complaints a lot of them have is they don't have that much space for all the products that are there.
Yeah.
So, you know, that conversation is just a dead one with some of the retailers around here.
I owned a comic shop, and my store was open, and I had Sam De La Rosa come in and do a signing on the very first free comic book day. And there was just a fire hose of product and information and people dealing with that retail environment. It's very hard to keep up, but I think that comics are full of a lot of sentimental people, and sometimes that sentiment extends to the fact that, you know, maybe on a good day we'll be able to sell all these books. It's like, well, you know, you've had 3 years, kick it. I just want to say hi to my buddy Longbox John.
There he is, right there.
There he is.
And you got in there. Blight Blazer. Is this an individual that you know? There you are.
I had some people on Twitter that are very excited that was going to be on the show.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah,
well, I'm excited that you're on the show. So I'm glad that
I'm happy to be here. I letter comics for John. I'm one of those people who's can do the self-starting thing from time to time, and I like being able to do rewrites on the fly. So I taught myself how to letter so I could letter my own stuff. So
same thing with me, man.
Now I do that with John. Yeah.
Same thing with me, because writing my own books, it felt really wrong to then give that to someone else, because I'm a degreed graphic designer too. So I was like, well, I can learn this. I can learn how to letter this book, you know. And so just doing that, it enabled me to make a more fluid kind of experience when you get the art back, and then you're like, oh, they did something really cool. I don't have to have this in there now.
I don't have to over-explain it. Yeah.
Or you can like juxtapose something else that's going on as the art explains the story out, you know, and kind of heighten the experience, as opposed to if you hand it off to a letterer, then they got to do all the little revisions you want them to do, and you know, the process is a little bit more cumbersome.
It adds on time, and I don't want to say lettering is hard. It's hard to develop the aesthetics and hard to master the tools. So I took a class at Comics Experience and learned from the great Dave Sharp how to letter comics, and you know, I do it now. I'm like I'm the kind of person who does that stuff for themselves and occasionally for people they like.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
And speaking of which, you wear a lot of hats, you know. So you have you're the writer, you're an inker, you're a letterer. Is there anything else that you do?
I argue with printers, publishers. I'm not sure what that is. It's not
Print
lawyer,
broker?
but it's something. Yes, wrangler. No, I will make my case for what I think is best for our projects in the long run. In some cases, it's not selling. I got to pull the plug on it. You know, I'm trying to figure out. I've got a project that I was trying to get started. It's a high fantasy project, and the artist just is not turning in pages. I've already inked a few of them, and I'd hate to do a bunch of work and not be able to use it, but I think I'm gonna have to fire the dude. So, you know, it won't be any change in his work output because he's not working now, but you know, it'll change our relationship to an extent.
Yeah, that's an unfortunate aspect of being a project manager like that. I've had to be in that position a few times.
Yeah, and you know, I don't totally begrudge people when they jump to a better paying gig or whatever it is that they're doing, but you know, at least give me a heads up.
Yeah, that always helps.
Yes. Surprise, I haven't heard from you in a month. Okay, make it 3 months. That's not good.
My favorite one was one time I just had to get a head revised, and it took like over a month. And I'm like, what is this?
Oh.
What is going on here?
Did you just have to put a smile on somebody's face, or how much did the head need to be revised?
It was really tough to explain, because it was like, you kind of want to say, like, can you just draw this good?
Yes.
It was one of those like, oh, can you just draw it out for me? And I'm thinking, like, what if I can't draw? Like, I found that there's a couple artists I've worked with over the length of my career where they take advantage of the fact that I can draw. and so I can draw it out for them and let them know. But I'm thinking like there's a lot of people who hire artists that it's like, here's your stick figure and your circle smiley face.
Yeah. That's a lot. That's what a lot of my breakdowns look like. I'll break stuff down for people, and when I hire a working professional, I expect him to be professional and working. So I will rough some things out. Because as I'm writing a script, I'm thinking about the way it'll hit the page, so I'll have some ideas already about page size and shape and orientation and all this stuff, and I'll pass that along. But penciling's a hard job, and it's very complicated. So I just finished the inks on a wraparound cover for Punchline 17, and I got together with my partner Matt, and he was supposed to get me a cover for the standard issue, and it took forever. But when he finally got it done, it looks great. And it's frustrating and enlightening whenever you work with somebody who makes you look at your own stuff and say, "Man, I suck." But working with Matt's a little bit like that. That dude's a genius.
I love working with people like that, though. When I hire an artist, it's specifically because I feel like they're more competent and capable for this task than I am.
Yeah.
If I look at someone's work and I go, I could do this way better, I'm not going to hire them. But if there's someone and they impress me with something and I'm like, man, like that's great, that's really, I got to hire this person.
I got a project in recently that's a backup story, and it's kind of fun, but there's a few things that are off, and I don't really want to have to bother the penciler to get them to redraw it, so I may just try to fix it myself. But it's one of those things where 90% of the job looks pretty good, and then that 10% is like, that's not what heads do. Don't make that like it is.
I hear you. Yeah, you got to sometimes adjust the perspective or the proportion of something. Yeah.
And that's part of what you have to do when you're an inker. Sometimes you have to fix things. It's not like the Marvel days where everybody's in a room, which is too bad, because I think that comics as a rule would be better off if we had something more like a studio system where you would have a couple of guys that get a lot of work and they hand out pages, and their assistants get really good at drawing backgrounds, and eventually they graduate to doing other stuff. I mean, the Brazilians do that, but I don't know of anybody who's doing that. The best example of that was probably Continuity Studios back in the day. But
that
was a murderer's row of talent. But once it was kind of a blessing when artists got to live wherever they want and work on comics, but because they don't all have to live in New York, they don't make each other better,
Yeah, there isn't that kind of improvement through friendly competition.
There's no camaraderie. It's like we run into each other at shows, but at shows we're tired because we had to do all the bullshit it takes to get to the show, and now we're about to set up and try to sell things for 3 or 4 days.
There's a little bit of that though now coming around though with social media, where you can see what everyone's doing as they upload it and they put it out there, and there's a little bit more of that kind of vibe. Not for everyone, but for a lot of people anyway.
I can see that. I somehow wonder if we haven't hit peak social media though, because I will sit at my drafting table and I'll be working and I'll put on a podcast or something, and I usually run those through YouTube, and then an ad will come on, and there's that 5 to 10 second where you can skip the ad, and if you don't skip it, that thing may run 10 minutes. You can hear this dude's entire life story about how he invented the new Vegematic, and if you look at it, like, most content is just a way to sell advertising. Maybe I want to go back to analog and avoid some of the stupid ass advertising.
Yeah, I mean that it's become so prevalent that even these streaming services that you pay for now, it's like they have ads, and then you got to pay an extra whatever if you don't want the ads.
I paid money for Peacock because I want to watch the next season of what's that show about Charlie? Oh, Poker Face. I want to watch the next season of that, so I've been watching that Suits LA show, and like, man, I'm paying for this and there's ads. It's like worst of both worlds.
The worst part about it for me is the ads that you're inundated with, especially in this country. And I believe it's only America and New Zealand to a lesser extent that allow pharmaceutical corporations to have ads.
I'm not sure that's going to be the case forever, but yeah, there's a whole lot of illnesses I didn't know that I had until I watched TV.
Yeah, and it's amazing, you get these things. Like, what I love is like an ad for like migraine medicine or something, and then meanwhile all the side effects are basically what you would have with a migraine and worse.
Yes, there's the surprise bowel loosening prospects when you take migraine pills. I'm like, can't I just have a headache?
Or like, you've got eczema and your side effect, well, it could be death.
Yes,
could be death if you take this instead of having your eczema or your psoriasis.
Yeah.
And it's mind-boggling. But all I could think too is commercials, ads. Those are for people to be aware of products that you could generally go out and purchase on your own. Like, I don't need to see a pharmaceutical prescription drug ad. Like, when they're like, go, ask your doctor about this thing. It's like, when I get evaluated, shouldn't my doctor have a list of options for me, one of which might be this pharmaceutical drug?
Yeah. I don't get that at all. I'm liking analog stuff a little bit more. I find that YouTube doesn't stick a whole lot of ads into live podcasts. So I've been trying to catch stuff live so I don't have to listen to all kinds of other BS, But now I've officially hit that cranky old man stage of my life where I complain about ads coming in.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I'm at a point where if I look at something that was a broadcast from, like, I don't know, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and they have commercials in it, I am enjoying those commercials. I actually don't mind them at all. They're uplifting. They're brainwashingly positive.
Yeah.
Like the Mentos commercial. Remember the Mentos commercial?
Everybody's happy in that commercial.
Yeah. I'm like, I like that. You know, and you don't really see much of that now. It's weird, like fear mongering ads.
Yes.
Or it's these unintelligible ads where half the time they don't even tell you what the heck you're supposed to be interested in on this ad.
Yeah. It's not like the ads even during the 60s. I'm enjoying the smooth taste of a Chesterfield. Cigarette ads and all kinds of other random stuff. Everybody looks happy in those ads. Now it's, if you don't take this drug, Martians are coming and beat your children. Oh, now I guess I have to take this drug now.
Yeah.
What the hell do those two things have to do with each other? Because it's easier to scare people than it is to uplift them in some ways, I think.
Yeah, perhaps, and it's I think a detriment to the product that they're probably trying to sell, but also just it just seems purposeful. Like it's trying to keep you in a state of constant anxiety and terror at all times.
There's this advertising phrase that says that 50% of your advertising is successful. Problem is you just don't know which 50%. So people feel like they're doing a good job when they buy a lot of ads, and then they have to wait for everything to kind of cycle through to see if there's a requisite bump in sales or awareness or something. So so much of this is just random BS aimed at the screen.
We did a fun local TV commercial when the newsprint stuff came out.
Yeah.
And I went to 2 comic shops and we filmed there. And then the comic shop split the very low cost of airing the commercial for like a month on Comedy Central and Cartoon Network.
That's awesome.
And it was fun. What it was like the first person viewpoint of you walk into a comic shop and everyone is just sniffing comics. And they're just taking all you hear is the audio pumped up with like the big
old nose breathe. Yeah.
And they're all got the comics in their face. They're all Alterna books, because of the newsprint.
Well, that's
and then,
awesome.
We get to the new release wall where it's all Alterna and the comic shop owner's there, and they turn around and they also have a big comic and they're just sniffing it. And then it just like kicks into the music and says, we brought back newsprint.
Yeah.
And it was fun to film. It was fun to get out there, and it wasn't anything that was like side effects or death, unless of course you sniff too much newsprint.
That'd be bad. Did it work, or was it just kind of a fun experiment?
It actually did. It worked. It worked for the shop. One shop was able to double the size of their store.
That's awesome.
within the next 6 months after the commercial aired. I don't know if it had anything to do with the commercial or if it was a coincidence, but I'll take credit for that. And then the other stop expanded into 2 locations. And then 7 years later, they closed because the guy wanted to get into a different aspect of another industry.
Yeah.
But, you know, it was nice. And then our sales, too, people were talking about the commercials when we would do a signing there and mentioning it to me. I just saw, you know, and it was local, like New England. But they were like, did I just see a commercial for you guys after Rick and Morty? And I'm like, yeah, you probably did.
Oh, that's awesome. I had a friend who was addicted to Rick and Morty, and I hadn't seen a whole lot of them. And then I saw him. I'm like, okay, I get this. I see why this is cool. I like how Lovecraftian Rick and Morty is. You know, they're just the horrors from beyond that those guys are fighting all the time. It's fun.
Yeah. And it felt like, okay, you know, if we had like a spot, it was around like South Park time spot on Comedy Central. I think we had like a week that we were on Sci-Fi, and then we had the in between Rick and Morty and whatever other show was on at the time on Adult Swim, Cartoon Network. It was just a fun commercial. I was just awesome. I told the people, I was like, because I was directing it, and I was like, you know, pretend that this is like a Twin Peaks comic shop. Is this a little bit weird?
Yeah.
You're really loving the smell of these books.
I think it's sort of what modern comics are lacking. You know, they're supposed to be fun. They're not. You know, maybe it's the whole fear element thing, but you know, most modern comics are written in terms of how much can my lead character take before they snap and trash the place. You know, just they're not a lot of fun.
Are we taking ourselves too seriously in comics?
Yes. You're not writing War and Peace. You're writing an issue of Batman.
And that's kind of the weird irony, is it feels like they were more fun when the comics were actually a bit more substantial.
Yeah.
And the stakes felt like they were a bit higher.
Yeah. You know, there's a thing that you have to do when you're writing where you have to have your characters be present, be in the moment. And it breaks me out of comic book fiction when essentially somebody turns right to the audience and just divulges a whole bunch of data. I'm like, there's a craftier way to do that. Don't
the hokey supervillain giving away all their plans.
Yeah, you'll never stop me because over in Locker 14, I've got the antidote. I'm like, what? Did he just say that out loud? That was a stupid idea. You know, it's just cliches work, and it's easy to write in cliches, but you shouldn't write cliches unless you can find a way to subvert them or, you know, turn them upside down and have some fun with them.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what enables it to be familiar but fresh at the same time, which is kind of the sweet spot you want to be in.
Yeah.
When you're writing for hopefully as large of an audience as you can get.
Yeah. In my case, when I sat down to write Punchline, I wanted to write something with some inspiration being like a little bit The Odd Couple, a little bit Lethal Weapon, where you've got a cranky older hero mentoring a fresh young hero who's full of optimism, and the cranky old hero has kind of been there and done that, and she's still mad about it. And I thought I could get some interesting sparks out of that. But you know, I think that it helps to have a solid premise in mind when you're getting started on a project. But you've got to find a way to make it fun, you know, and make it new without just having to go through your entire publisher's codex to put together all the little pieces. You know, find a way to do your version of something and make it fun without you know, putting a huge burden on the readers.
What comes first for you, creating character or creating plot?
In this case, character. So in the first issue of Punchline, Mel has been cut off from her access to superpowers, and she's been stabbed and she's dying. And she randomly runs into somebody who says, well, what if I helped you out? What if I took on your job? She's like, well, maybe it'll work, maybe. And she's pretty sure that she's going to die whenever the power transfer happens, but she doesn't. And I wrote that with no idea how I was going to solve that. I was like, oh, that's interesting. There's a lot of potential there. Let's go make some comics. So we did that, and then she sends her protege out on a mission that night, and she schools her, telling her, if you knew where the bad guys are, you'd be more effective, and that's what I can bring to the thing. She's mentoring the kid while also pitching that she should be around, so she's working on some sort of selfish scheme that she's in the middle of. And then you find out at the end of the second issue, she wanted to get close to somebody who had wronged her. She just stabs him like 57 times. She's just pissed off. But I wanted to have, the image in my mind was, what if somebody like Modesty Blaze trained Supergirl? You've got not necessarily polar opposites, but maybe polar opposites when it comes to the preservation of life. Mel's opinion is, hey, just kill a bad guy, fucking problem solved. And the kid's more like, well, she rightly says, you take away that person's chance to redeem themselves. So that's the philosophical tug of war between the two characters in the book, and it expresses itself in different ways. So, I came up with the concept, and then as time went by and as we were successful, I figured out the cosmological reasons that stupid shit like that would be going on, and made that a thing. So characters first, they drive the plot, and then figure out the architecture behind the scenes as I'm going along.
Same for me, man. Same for me. I find that the character creation really informs where the story's going to go. I can have a great plot in mind, but if I don't have the right characters with the right motivations to be in that plot, it's going to come across real odd and awkward and forced. So I always start with focusing on character creation. Yeah. And then it's almost as if the stories start to write themselves. Like, I don't want to say it's necessarily easy, but it's definitely easier than having a great plot and then just trying to put the right character in there. Because as soon as you put these characters into that plot that you're so set on, if you're a good writer, you're going to start realizing, like, I got to change some things about this plot.
Yeah. Or explain why the character would do something out of character at some point. So you need to have, even if it takes just a fig leaf. When I was writing the two stories in Punchline 17, there are a couple of 12-pagers, and I was writing that, and I'm like, okay, there's a text conversation between Mel and her protege on page 1. I was like, oh, I don't have a whole lot of real estate here. How do I get the protege's new superhero partner into the story in a quick way? And you don't need to give the audience a whole lot they don't need a whole lot, but you need to give them something. You need to give them a reason to play along. At one point somebody says, happy coincidence, I ran into you while we were on patrol. That's all you need. You just need to find some way to keep the story moving and interesting and sort of all put together.
Yeah, stuff like that. It's like a nice segue to just have this easy transition of, okay, you're establishing these characters, why they're there, what maybe relationship they have, especially depending on the tone that they're coming across when they interact with this person. Like, you don't have to do a tremendous amount of, like, you don't need this exposition of explaining, who this character is, why they're there, what their whole life story is all about, to properly get them caught up with the reader.
Yeah. I think the last thing you need to do is have somebody give you their mission statement every issue. Like,
it's not natural either.
No, nobody does that. I exist to make comics, blah, 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 blah. No, that people don't talk like that. People make jokes, they make fun of each other, they get along. It's more interesting to have serious conflict expressed by subtle jabs from time to time. So the characters in my books make fun of each other from time to time. So, it's fun.
Yeah. And that's how you get like a nice sense of levity at points when things are getting really heavy without making it silly and nonsensical.
Yeah. And there's the same kind of thing. I think if you write so that your characters are present in the moment, you have them reacting to the things in the environment. You have them making jokes about each other. You have them doing little things. And as a writer who also letters, that's one of those things where you can come in at the last minute and add a line of dialogue or maybe cut something that really is helpful to establish the flow of the book, so that everything kind of seems to flow naturally and inevitably towards a certain point.
Yeah. Agreed 100%. Man. Bill, this was a great conversation, man. I seriously, I know you're not feeling 100%, but this was awesome. And I'd like to have you come on again down the line, if that'd be okay with you.
Yeah. I will need another couple of months to get enough work in to get another comic book ready to pitch. Maybe next time we can do it closer to a fundraiser that I'm doing.
Yeah, sounds good. Absolutely. Did you have anything you want to plug or pitch before we wrap things up?
Not so much. I think that Punchline 16 on Kickstarter is still taking late customers. I forget the exact term for it. So if you want to check that out, if not, buy it at your comic shop in September.
All right, awesome. Well, Bill, thank you so much. Everybody in the chat, thank you guys too. Really appreciate you guys being in here. And Bill, I appreciate you being so generous with your time tonight.
Yeah.
And your health.
Yeah.
Now,
I didn't expect to catch a cold right before the chat, but I'll burn it out.
We never do. It's this time of year too. It just it gets you unexpectedly.
Very true.
Yeah. But no, you were great. You sounded great. You didn't hack up a lung or two.
Not
everything
yet.
You could want.
There's still a minute left in the show.
All right, everyone. I'll be back tomorrow night, 9:00 Eastern. Be launching the newsprintcomics.com. That takes you again to that Fund My Comic campaign, where I'm going to be launching that campaign to start printing on newsprint in-house and making comics, not just for myself, but also for other people too, funding the equipment and everything that you could think of necessary to get these things looking nice and being done in a feasible way, which is very important. Until then, everyone, have a wonderful night and an even better tomorrow. I'll see you soon.
Thanks, everybody.